And good evening, everyone. Welcome to an alternate perspective or another perspective or somebody else's perspective or whatever, but definitely probably not Will's perspective because he's eating a bowl of Fruit Loops right now. And so it is I, Bob Tesk, with the introduction on this wonderful sunny March 31st. Well, wonderful and sunny here. And that's really all that matters. And with us in the house is His Eminence, Chief Lord Dr. Wil Wonka Winston Churchill Washington Spencer of the Clan McSpencer Esquire, DDS, DOD, CIA, NSA, ONI, ABC, Easy as 1, 2, 3, 33rd degree, MOUSE, and apparently now Cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. And he was with us, and I think he's on another call, but the world-renowned author. You can hear the rumble of his not-so-humble court jester of Juju, Grain, Ghetto Grouchmeister, Grim Reaper of Groceries, Cunning Linguist, Caustic Gnostic, 41-foot roundworm wrangler. Patrick, don't you dare ask me what ICD 999 means. I'm taking notes, man. And no, for me, it's just Bob, so that'll have to do there.
No, it's Dr. No. It's Dr. No. Come on now.
It's a dishonorary degree that was bestowed on me by Patrick Jordan. It in no way, shape, or form indicates that I was brain dead enough to spend that many years trying to prove to someone that I could parrot useless, inaccurate information back and kiss ass better than anybody else in their myopic little classroom while subsequently paying $15,000 a year for the privilege.
So that means you're not a PhD piled higher and deeper?
No, I'm not. PhD push here, dummy.
Oh, I like that.
As always, Wolf Spirit Radio is totally user-supported, so come to wolfspiritradio.com, find a donate button, click it like you have Tourette's, and help keep us on the air. If you would like to call in, the Ma Bell number, well, it's Ma Bell for the rest of us. For Patrick, it's apparently Dominatrix Bell, because all she does is bitch slap him with copper, it seems. But the dial-up number is 702-879-4770, or you can feel free to Skype in at wolfspirit.switchboard1. And a caveat on calling in, folks. If you're going to call in before the last half hour of the show, so at least we have time to address your questions adequately and try to keep it on topic. I mean, you know, hey, a lot of the times we don't have a topic and we just mire around, so if you want to call in and give us a topic, feel free. Absolutely, not a problem. Questions? Sure. But don't train wreck. And this apparently goes for other hosts, too, who like to call in and train wreck. And I'm kind of biting my tongue on this last one, but probably not going to bite it much longer. So don't enter into a battle of wits unarmed if you feel you're going to come on the air, trash us, and get away with it. And the bottom line is the only reason I didn't do it back this time is because I tried to listen to that dumb show, and I had to shove pencils in my ears to stop the pain. So forewarned is forearmed. If you don't like the message, turn off the station. Okay, that's the administrative details. Are you done with your Fruit Loops, Will?
Well, just to be very clear, I'm not eating Fruit Loops. Okay? I detest Fruit Loops. They make my inner ears squeal and my vertigo go crazy, just to let you know, okay? Has bad memories of childhood. But I am munching on some chicken. So, it is supper time where I am. So did Patrick... Oh, there he is. I heard him. Go ahead, Patrick.
If you stain your fingers with grapefruit, you will smell like Fruit Loops all day.
Now, is this the genetically modified grape juice that comes from Welch's? Or would this be homemade? Real fruit juice?
Grapefruit. Yeah, the citrus.
Oh, grapefruit. Okay, I'm sorry.
I think they use like a artificially laboratory-created grapefruit mimic to put on Fruit Loops. That's all I'm saying.
It's amazing what different colors come with coal tar, isn't it? You know.
I'm having a heart attack, man. Don't you know? You gotta work slowly. That was just too sudden.
No, this is like no. We're jumping off the ice into the nice cold water, and we're gonna swim like hell.
Okay. Towards Gilligan's Island. Got that free prizes last week.
We're going to look for the plane. Exactly.
That was perfect. So we do, Will, if you got nothing else on the agenda, we do have a listener that had written us to explore the topic of nature versus nurture. They actually went into detail on what they were looking at, but I thought that was an interesting question.
I love this topic, and I'll be glad to talk about. Do we need to read something specific? Because I have to go back and actually look for that email. It got buried this week.
I didn't save it offline.
Oh, I will find it, so carry on. I'll be right back.
Yeah. I thought, Bob, that you would be very interested in this topic of, just discussing whether nature or Jose Delgado has more of an influence on the ultimate expression of the entity.
That's actually pretty funny. And don't let him fool you. He went to get more Fruit Loops.
Right.
I did not get more Fruit Loops. Okay.
Just pain, man. Telegraph these things first.
Yeah, that's just your pathogens that are jealous for my Fruit Loops, you see. It's not real heart problem. It's really the fungus inside your heart cavity that are jealous over my Fruit Loops, Patrick, just to let you know. So I got
not having a heart gives me a distinct advantage here.
Oh man, I got to look into that.
I'll mail you some. I found one laying out back.
Pig's heart, sheep's heart, cow's heart, enemy's heart.
Something like that, yeah. It's actually one of those white ones that all you got to do is put it in your body, and then your body will just grow tissue on it, and it'll start working.
Oh, Jarvik heart.
Yeah.
So back to the question, nature versus nurture. It sort of was a topic for a couple of days with me with somebody else this week, so it's pretty interesting. I didn't get the email, actually, but I guess I'm having email problems, too.
I am having email problems also, and so just a forewarner, a claimer here. I've had several people call wondering why I haven't responded to them. I haven't responded to them because the email didn't land into my email. This is happening now to several of my friends that are sharing sensitive and truthful information. And the AI, like Patrick talks about so well, that he is, because he's at the end of the copper line out there in the middle of Roundupville, the AI messes with the slower systems first. And I have the server on GoDaddy, and GoDaddy is also engulfed into the corporate veil and the AI. So please don't assume that I'm not getting your emails, or Patrick or Bob. Send something again, call, email again, until you get a response. Squeaky wheel gets to oil. It's not a personal, I'm ignoring you. Seriously.
Would that be canola oil, corn oil, vegetable oil, coconut oil?
Any oil that you choose, preferably a nice organic plant oil because they last a little bit longer, then you use that. Yeah.
GoDaddy, as far as I know, is bought out by Google.
I started having problems within 30 days after the merger.
Wow.
I found the email.
Good.
So here it goes. Hey, one thing I forgot. Okay, that's the email.
That's email number 2.
Oh, your email number 1. Okay. Wanted to ask if you could talk about the following Monday. Could you talk about the effects of upbringing has on people, from family to school to friends to TV? He calls it the trash vendor. I call it the electric toilet. To social institutions of all bowel movements, but it contributes on the misinformation of our character, personality, and its mechanisms. Thank you. That's a week-long show right there. Could you talk about the effects? Wow. Go ahead there, Bob.
I was going to say, I got time, at least right this moment.
Well, we got, yep.
I wanted to hear from Bob from the point of view of not human beings, which of course that's what the listener had want us to address, but like a Rottweiler. Because if you have a Doberman and you don't clip its tails and you don't clip its ears, and by the way, they have floppy silken ears and really long tails, and you raise it as if it was just a friendly puppy, 9 times out of 10, if you don't give it a rabies vaccine, it's going to be a friendly adult dog.
And this is actually my observation and my gnosis, and I'm going to caveat this with, I am most definitely not going to give anybody any scientific research here. I may mention things off and on, but here is what I have known to be true. Despite whatever your belief in a creator is, we're all created unique consciousnesses, unique individuals, and as such, I am firmly of the understanding that that is universally unalterable. Okay? The first initiation of a Gnostic is quite simply a ritual, and the ritual depends on what particular, country, continent, clan, school, whatever that you were in. The purpose of your first initiation is to put you into a physical experience that tips the hand to you of what your physical meat suit, corpuscular manifestation, ego most closely is aligned with your consciousness, your superego, whatever you want to call it. Okay? Now, we all know, we've talked about this before, about how, if you want to do Bruce Lipton epigenetics, how your DNA is alterable by your environment, and this is pretty much scientifically a fact now. So raising does come into play here, but it also creates the wonderful term that they like to use on us, cognitive dissonance. Okay? You can be programmed. Obviously, we know this because we're all pretty much programmed on a somewhat regular basis. However, I, am of the knowing that there are fundamentally parts of us that cannot be altered. So let's apply that to what we'll use Rottweiler, since Patrick used Rottweiler. Okay? Every animal, every dog has a unique personality. They have a unique combination of a gene expression that gives them their own quirks, their own peccadillos, their own uniqueness, much like any other sentient consciousness. As a general rule, that breed has been particularly engineered to weigh heavily towards certain characteristics. One of those characteristics is defensiveness. The Rottweilers are not inherently aggressive and offensive. They are inherently defensive. If you approach and they are on guard, they will stand their ground and come at you. If you back up, they back up. Okay? That's one of their gene expressions. Another one of their gene expressions is exceptionally territorial. They happen to be one of the easiest dogs there is to train and contain. If you take a Rottweiler puppy and a couple of times a day on a regular basis, walk the perimeter of your property, you will create like a fence that's a brick wall. The dog will not violate its instinctively demonstrated periphery. Okay? So inherently speaking, in their DNA is this capability. Does that mean that this capability is automatic and exercised? Well, to a point, yes, absolutely. To another point, it can be reinforced by your external programming, or it could be violated by your external programming. Now, in this particular instance, a violation of the dog's natural instincts would require more effort and energy on your part. But anybody that has a dog knows something real simple, okay? Especially if you think dogs are difficult to train. We notice how quickly dogs get what we consider to be bad habits, okay? When it's to the dog's benefit, it learns a skill relatively immediately. But yet when we try to train it, okay, we're like, oh, we can't teach this dog anything, can't teach an old dog new tricks. No, it's because you're not understanding the behavior and how to reinforce the behavior and whether or not that behavior is instinctual to the dog, okay? So yes, you can turn a Rottweiler into a lap dog. I mean, I have a 105-pound pit bull, some sort of hound dog mix here that was a rescue, and he is the Zen Buddhist lap dog of like all dogs. And you know, it quite literally is, you can train them and raise them to be whatever you want them to be behaviorally, but their inherent personalities, their genetically encoded character traits are always going to be there. They're not, by my experience or knowledge, alterable. They are only containable. So at any particular instant, there may be an environmental consideration that triggers a genetic response from any animal that is completely and totally outside of its programmed behavior. And if we translate this to human beings, what we get once again is what we call cognitive dissonance. What we get once again is this internal conflict where if you are remotely self-aware, you may or may not realize that it's programming or programming whatsoever, but the fact remains is that something doesn't sit right with you. You may be programmed to think a measure of success is how many digits are in your bank account, yet going every day and making massive amounts of money at some chosen occupation of yours may not sit right with you. You're still performing the behavior. You're still programmed to perform it. You will torture yourself trying to reap some sort of benefit from this behavior, but yet maybe you don't sleep at night. Maybe you compulsively take drugs. You have some sort of semi-self-destructive behavior trying to soothe this cognitive dissonance. Okay? And this to me is it's not nature versus nurture. It is nature and nurture. Okay? Who we are is a product of what we were created to be, what we were born to be, what we can decide to create ourselves into. Okay? However, there are forces out there that know this as well, and they use an external program to try to control our behavior, which they are successful at, but they have had somewhat limited success in making those behavioral changes alter who we are. Because as far as I'm concerned, who we are is only alterable by us. What we do is a completely different story. So that's kind of my synopsis on it. Okay, everybody wake up now. I'm done.
No, I wasn't sleeping. This is marination time here.
It's the sugar from those Fruit Loops.
Yeah. How'd you guess? Can't you hear me? I'm talking so fast like this. The sugar is really kicking in.
That ain't sugar, man.
Sugar-like substance? No, I'm not eating Fruit Loops, okay? Just to let you know that. I'm not eating Fruit Loops. I'm done. And I had chicken. You're not nurturing me very well, Bob. This is a big issue. And I'm hearing a lot of feedback in my head here, so don't know if that's me or what's going on there, but okay, it's gone now. Thank you. Whoever, Dave, did you fix that? Thank you. Okay. There's a book that I would recommend everyone needs to get their hands on.
Hello?
It is The Magical Child by Joseph Pierce. Oh, and I see we got a caller. Is that true?
Yes. It's true.
Oh.
Hello?
Oh, hi.
Hi, it's Cheryl from California.
Hi, Cheryl.
Hi. Well, I was emailing you this morning, and I said I'd call in about this, so maybe it would help other people in case anything like this happens to them, too.
Okay.
Okay. So, about a month ago, I noticed in the morning I was looking down the toilet at my pee, and there were these fibers in it, and I'd never seen that before, and I looked at it, and I tried to figure it out, and I got a little scared. I thought, oh my gosh, what is that? And I just couldn't come up with any explanation for it, and so I thought, oh well, I guess it's just processing out of me, whatever, forget about it. And I did, but then it happened again the next morning, and I thought, oh dear. I was going to take a picture of it, but I never did, and then it didn't happen for a while again, and it happened this morning. And also, I noticed that the past couple of days, I've kind of had this weird metallic taste in my mouth, and sometimes even this kind of really gross, like rotting death taste. Anyhow, so, and you said there was a connection between these things.
Yeah, there is. There's like 50-some illnesses all tied to the creation of the backstory to what you're experiencing. And it does fall into the parasitic camp of Morgellons.
Mm-hmm.
So, if Patrick is there, are you here, Patrick?
I'm here.
Do you have anything in your database regarding horsehair worms?
Strong Pleiades is one of like the horsehair whipworm kind of family of parasites, and the strange thing is that there is associations with HTLV, which is a variant of the AIDS virus that seems to be like a hitchhiker with that particular worm. Now, my question to the caller is, what color were the fibers?
Like a kind of bluish gray sort of color. Kind of dark.
Did they have any motion of their own?
No.
No movement at all.
Not that I noticed, no.
My experience is that a lot of those fibers is the end product of the life cycle of the nematode, the horsehair worm, or you call it the whip. There's several different parasites in the nematode family that are connected. My understanding is that whole thing has been engineered as a biological and chemical weapon many, many moons ago, we're talking from the 50s, as an affecting agent, a vector agent to infect the food chain. And it is the end product and the husk of the worm itself as it hijacks the hair. Sometimes people experience these hairs growing, as well as the parasites die inside us, the husk or the outside of the so-called fibril, and if you look under a microscope, they're hollow. That's actually the body of a parasite. So I've had people send pictures of they were having a little bit of discomfort urinating and actually put it up in front of a light and took a picture of it, and this stuff was just loaded with these short little fibers in their urine as well as in the feces. So very common, people doing our program, working with us, stuff like that comes out of you. It's kind of crazy, I know. Science fiction, if you want to look at it that way. But it's really, 65-year-old warfare agents at play here.
Mm-hmm. And how about the connection to the metallic taste in my mouth?
Well, with all of this stuff, we have the parasites, the pathogens, the heavy metals. It's all related. If we weren't loaded up with heavy metals, we didn't have any vaccinations, we would eat food that is actually food, these parasites and pathogens wouldn't be able to manifest in the quantity that they manifest if we were vibrantly healthy. So the connection is, it doesn't surprise me one single bit that you're having metallic flavors in your mouth while you're expelling stuff like this. It's very common. So,
and if you have
what's that?
If you're having a kind of, your candida is up and bothering you, are you more likely to experience something like this?
Oh, repeat that because you cut out.
In my last scan, which was a week ago, I noticed my candida had gone back up again. Would that have anything to do with, I'm taking the AOT again, them coming in or going out, or does it attract anything?
Being expelled. Being expelled. See, here's this thing regarding the scan stuff. Okay, it only picks up what's stressing your body, and it's very common that numbers go really high down the road as your body gets more healthy and your immune system functions better. It actually allows for more of the parasites, the pathogens, and the other toxins in your body to be released out into your system for remediation. So here's where you're looking at your numbers may go higher, showing there's more stress there. You're feeling better and your symptoms are going away. So this is where you got to adjust your thinking. High numbers don't equate to more illness. That's the allopathic thinking. If the higher numbers are on allopathic tests, oh my gosh, things are getting worse, but not here. Doesn't work that way here. And the other thing to consider is spring is here. Temperatures are getting warmer. Like here, we had 5 inches of snow yesterday. Today, it's all gone. It's moist in the air, and I'm noticing more itching. So, and it wouldn't surprise me, and I'm getting to the bottom of this for doing some testing, but this hot and cold and hot and cold and hot and cold back and forth like this, in with the rain and the snow, is actually increasing your fungi and bacterial counts outside. And we've been getting reports of high amounts of lead, iron, and a lot of other heavy metals in the rain and the snow lately, and some other chemicals. So there's stuff in the air falling down, the fungus and the bacterial counts are a lot higher. So we have more, the VOCs, volatile organic compounds, that are floating around in the air. You can't see them, but it's there. Plus we got the spraying in the atmosphere. Plus, plus, plus. Is that you making noise there, Cheryl?
It was, yes. It wasn't me, but it was something.
Okay.
Yes.
The ghost in the background.
Is it off on? Okay.
You got anything else to add, you guys? Patrick? Bob? Anything? Hello?
All is quiet.
All is quiet.
I'm trying to look up strongyloides.
How about Ask Clementes? Try that one. That one is pretty much sterilized out of the text nowadays. The last time that I could find that was back in the late 50s, early 60s in any textbook. Otherwise, it's pretty well sterilized. You don't even see that word anymore.
You're going to have to spell it, Will, because I've never even heard of it.
Oh, well, we'll have an offline conversation regarding that then, because that's quite important, actually. But you'll notice that there's a lot of rewriting of the books, just like the new series of Biology of Aggression that just come out last year. So I'm just kind of curious what they're leaving out or what they're trying to sterilize out of the data, out of the books, so you don't know. A lot of information now has been altered in the last 20, 30 years from the information back before that. Because in the creating of these biological and chemical warfares on the food chain, on people altogether, they've been sanitizing the data so nobody can freely get to the connection that this is a strategy. This is an pure assault on the human body and the environment we live in across the board. And the industrial education system coupled with the military, the army, they have biological warfare agents, chemical agents that are found and used. I mean, I can identify them. If I can identify them, anybody else can identify them if they want to. I'm not living in denial. I am in the same camp as Patrick on this one. I am totally under the thinking and the belief that this is a multifaceted military occupation on every level. And the human beings that are on the ground living and living their lives are the enemy. Because I'm seeing biological and chemical agents in people's bodies that shouldn't be there. How do you suggest that Tulmeria ends up in Kansas, which is a Russian-created biological weapon? These ticks, so-called, tick-borne illness like Lyme's, which it's not tick-borne in my book, it's airborne. 9 out of 10 people that we deal with have this problem. And then you wonder why we have just natural Candida families, Aspergillus, there's a whole bunch of just regular environmental bacteria and fungi now that are going pathogenic in people's bodies. And they're only doing that because people are just that unhealthy. So, did that address things there, Cheryl?
Yeah, I think you did. Yeah. That's good, yeah. Okay. Well, I'm going to get going then.
Okay. Thanks for calling in.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Okay. All right, so we're going to get back to that first topic that we opened the show with, but unless the caller has a new topic. We got another caller, 940. Caller, hello.
Hello, this is Brenda. I'm just calling in to mention a few new symptoms. Me and my husband, Jeff, this is Brenda, by the way, if I hadn't mentioned that. Me and Jeff have been on your protocol for 3 months now, and he's getting a new symptom. So I was wondering if I could just tell you about that briefly and get your comments on it.
Yeah, we'll do that, absolutely. And we'll get back to the show topic after we're done with you then, Brenda. Thank you.
Okay. The first couple of months, Jeff was experiencing an improvement in his night vision, which had been a problem. So that was a good thing, since we started protocol. But just recently, he has, other symptoms that he was having some pretty bad problems with due to his Graves' disease, and they were like exacerbating. But now those are a lot better, and that was a big relief. But now he is having issues with his night vision seems to be getting worse right now, and at the same time, he says his eyeballs are feeling bigger and gritty. And he wasn't sure what to do about that. And also, if I can mention, also something I'm going through, I'm having, for the last couple of weeks, I'm having a lot of brain fog that just doesn't seem to go away. And it feels to me like it's a detox symptom, because I've been through detoxes before. But, I'm just wondering if you have any comment about that, or, how long that tends to last. And our diet has been totally nut, grain, seed, tuber free for over 3 months now. Okay, and that's it.
All right, so the eyes getting worse, very common. When the pathogens, their life's getting threatened, they will migrate into areas that they can try to get away from the assault. The upper sinus cavities, up in the head, behind the eyes is a very safe place for them, in the mucosal lining and the tissues up in your head. Very common. So this is where keeping the full frontal assault and being good with the diet, so you're not feeding them, and then keeping up with everything. You can put things in your eyes. Like we use probiotics in our eyes, even the AOT. You can use saline, salt water, up your nose, in your ears. It's really, plus orally through the digestive tract and the blood and stuff. So those little critters are smart. That's why we talk about this, lump them into the Archon thing, because they have an intelligence that are very cunning, and their will to survive is extremely high.
Yeah, one thing I forgot to mention is, before when I called in and I said about the big purge that he had the craving, thoughts all day of having beer and pizza, up until he purged. And now he says the last couple of days he has been thinking a lot about carb foods. Like, potatoes and, grain type foods.
Mm-hmm. Very common. I have another client that has a rectal tumor. The medical system called it cancer. Cancer never showed up. Bacteria and virus did. And the tumor is, something's happening, it's shifting, something's going on there. And for the last couple of days, she's been calling and checking in. She's having depression, suicide thoughts. I mean, this is how these colonies, like Patrick says in his stuff, they create nerve networks that connect with us. And as they're dying, they're giving off the death signal, and you think you're dying. You're hearing this thought like, I'm dying. Very common. And then when they're dying, they want to be fed. So not only you're getting the I'm depressed thing, but then it's like, I want some beer and pizza thing. also you're feeling or hearing. I mean, they're smart. I don't know how else to, say that. They're like very intelligent to cause you, the human, to do things for their benefit and not yours. All the way up till they die. And you can track this simply by making notes. If Jeff went through this already, which he did, it's doing the same thing again. It gets sometimes a little worse, especially up in the head, because the mycotoxins can be very, very caustic and harmful. As these colonies are dying, they give off some nasty acids.
That makes sense.
Patrick, you got any more to add to that? Because I'm sure you do. If you're here.
I'm looking up ophthalmia. It's when the eyeballs get bigger when you have hyperthyroid.
It's very common.
I'll be back.
It's common because I noticed this with some friends that were liking cocaine just a little bit too much when we were younger, and their eyeballs got huge, like really big, and they also were having thyroid problems at the same time. They were also having massive fungal and bacterial problems also. So what was causing the problem? I'd say all of the above, but I'm sure the recreational cocaine did not do them any good. So, and if the symptoms get too bad, then we have to do something about making sure the comfort level is a little bit more acceptable, but it just will work its way out. I mean, I don't have any other, you can mitigate the symptoms the best you can and just let the body do what the body's going to do, because this is the thing, you cannot predict where these little critters are going to end up going. You can chase them out of the throat and they'll end up in the nose. Chase them out of the nose, they'll end up in the ear. As they could end up, they'll just move around. There's no way to predict that. Anybody that says any different, I will say hogwash. You cannot predict where these microorganisms are going to go very well. But it's very common that they're going to go up into the sinus cavity and affect eyes, affect your nose, affect your ears. They can even go all the way up and affect your hair, because they'll keep going until they run out of places to run from the assault.
So is that the same thing that's going on with me with the fuzzy-headedness?
Well, I would say. Yep, very common. A lot of people go through that. When they start getting better, this is the peaks and the valleys, the ups and the downs. The 2 steps forward and 1 step back, if you want to look at it like that.
Yeah, I was thinking it might be that my protocol is a bit too strong, so which I can't handle the full protocol right now. I mean, the other day I was feeling really good. I was going to up it, but then whenever I took my first dose, I just started getting a lot of detox, so I didn't do the full dose. But I was wondering if it was fully the stuff that I'm taking. So I didn't take it for 2 days to see if the symptoms, cleared up, and they're not. I'm still fuzzy-headed, so I'm just going to go ahead and take it as I was.
Well, got to do what you got to do. It's sometimes can be quite emotionally taxing. I've been there, done that myself.
Yeah, for me it's a little more physical. It's just like my head starts feeling too blah and heavy and foggy, and it's, I feel like I need to function at least a certain degree, so I backed off some, but I'm just going to go back and, work my way back up and see if I can take the whole thing, because I would like to just, get through this, and instead of like keeping it around keeping these things around like pets.
Well, this is where being passionately following along with things, and it'll happen sooner or later. And again, you can go too fast and cause just as much upset. And then if you're emotionally upset, you're feeling really bad, you can't function in life. And sometimes that emotional drain can be very hard on you, especially physically.
Yeah, I've done that before, and I think I know my limit. I can't go beyond a certain point, because I'm just not willing to, allow it to get that rough. But I'm okay with just being, having some symptoms, because I know it's gonna. If I don't take anything, it's just gonna take longer. But if I am okay with having moderate symptoms, even if they're, uncomfortable, of course, but moderately so, not too severe, then it's just all that much quicker that stuff works out. So I try to find that balance.
Right. There again, it's about balance. Some people, they'll just, trudge through it if they can, and some people don't. They just, adjust their way of doing things. So, Patrick, did you find that thyroid thing you were looking for?
Can you hear me now?
I can. Yeah, there you are.
Okay. Yeah, I'm looking at my pathophysiology book. Infiltration of the orbital tissues, meaning your eyeballs, and ocular muscles. So there's a lot of things like slow blinking, no blinking, staring. The things that they blamed Barbara Bush for doing is never blinking. She was hyperthyroid. She had Graves. So there's infiltration with lymphocytes, white blood cells, mast cells. Those are the ones that create histamine and let fluid flow into the tissues, and that probably explains why the eyeball gets bigger. And plasma cells, those are blood cells. Leads to exophthalmos, congestive oculopathy, and weakness of the extraocular movements. The ophthalmopathy can be quite severe, and in extreme cases, vision may be threatened. Graves' disease appears to develop as a manifestation of an autoimmune disorder.
Autoimmune disorder.
Body is fighting itself.
Yep. Not only fighting itself, but could be eating itself. Could be not just attacking itself. There's a lot of contributions to making that particular autoimmunity happen. Like vaccines, vaccine residue, chemicals. Plant proteins called lectins. So, and repairing the damage from this stuff, it has, how the body does the healing sometimes is really weird. The things it does. It just does not surprise me, some of the weird stories that people tell about how the body is going, how the body is healing.
Well, there were a couple of other of Jeff's Graves' disease symptoms that had gotten really bad, off and on. He was getting better, and then he would have like the high anxiety and rapid heartbeat all of a sudden. And, he assumed maybe he needed to go up on meds at the time, but he just kind of found other ways to just get through these little episodes. And yeah, it seems like some of the typical symptoms of Graves' disease, it looks like they get worse as he's going through the protocol. But now he's getting better. He's not having those symptoms that much anymore, which is a great relief.
Well, hopefully he didn't go up in his meds, because going up in the meds really has a long-term negative effect. It may help in the short term, but then it causes more problems down the line, because the residue that these pharmaceuticals leave in your body set you up for more problems, for the pathogens to grow and have more foothold.
Yeah, he didn't go up. I'm really glad for that. He almost went to his doctor. But no, he didn't do that, and it was a temporary thing, and now he's not having that. So it's a good thing he didn't go up in his meds.
Well, that's a good deal, then. Alrighty.
Okay. That's all I had.
All right. Anything else, Patrick, that you want to share?
No.
Okay.
I couldn't find anything more on the strong loides. I was trying to make a connection from memory to whatever was in print on the I think it's HTLV. It's a variant of the HIV that seems to be present or carried by that particular strong loides parasite.
Okay. All right. Well, Brenda, thanks for calling in.
Okay. Thanks, you guys, for the information.
You're welcome. We'll talk to you later.
Right. Okay. Bye-bye.
All righty. Well, at least a couple people were listening. They called in the first hour. So, let's see here. All right, no more callers. All right, so we're going to take a break in like 3 minutes. So, but we started the show out with a topic from an email, if you remember, about the nature nurture. And this is really big. I mentioned a book, and I'll mention it again. It's called Magical Child, Joseph Pierce. It was written back in the 70s, which today's science, like the last 5 years, is like codifying the book written in the 70s, which is huge about this nature nurture. Have you noticed most people don't live in a natural setting, though? And the nurturing thing is really, really lacking. I mean, real, true nurture. So, we're going to get back talking about this topic. It's going to be break in 2 minutes. So, don't know if we want to really hit anything before the break, guys.
Well, I guess the overall picture would be, is there any difference between a dog and a human? After, Bob did his dissertation, now we're going to cross it over into the two-legged variety. Is there any difference?
Yeah, I find dogs to be more loyal, more capable of unconditioning love, and definitely more obedient.
I should have known better.
Especially from these breeds that are deemed not good to have. I had Rottweilers and pit bulls myself on the farm, and with raising my children, and I find no two better breeds to have. I had 3 different Rottweilers through the years on my farm, and those dogs were the most loyal. I took and walked the perimeter of my entire 40 acres. They never left the 40 acres. They took care of and guarded. I mean, talk about territorial. They were passionately protective of their pack. Their pack happened to be consisting of several children, myself, at the time I was married, over 100 goats. I don't even know how many chickens. And if there was any harm that was taking place or any threat, these animals were like on guard and right there. But yet they were the biggest lap dogs, the biggest family pack, like one of the members of the family. If they could only talk, sometimes you were like hearing them think. They were like wanting to talk that much and be part of the family.
Well, here's the skinny on pit bulls. Pit bulls were originally called nanny dogs. They were bred to be tolerant of the random behaviors of children. That's where they get their pain threshold from. Their aggression they get from the fact that they were originally bred to protect children of the wealthy and the aristocracy who frequented colonies where wild animal attacks were prevalent. And in that particular situation, there's only a certain amount of defensiveness that's appropriate. So pit bulls had a more aggressive bend to them, but it's an animal aggression. It is not a people aggression. Pit bulls were also not successfully fought. They landed not accidentally, but they landed on a cover of a Sports Illustrated, I believe it was 1987 or 89 article on dogfighting. It is their appearance on that cover that made them the preeminent dogfighting breed. They were not fought before then because they do not have the inherent breed characteristics to fight. They're exceptionally difficult to train to fight. It's a travesty, once again, and there's the programming, that inherently everything that this dog is a babysitter that makes your kid as safe as it was in its mother's womb, if not safer. And yet this is what it's perverted to.
I can agree. The one pit bull that I had was extremely protective. Never harmed the child. Not one time. But harm anybody that was trying to harm the child or any other of the pack. Watch out.
When I lived in the country in upstate New York, I didn't have any kids, but the neighbors all used to send their kids to my yard to play because they knew the kids couldn't go anywhere and that absolutely positively no one was going to bother them in the yard. I mean, and these people were like country folk. They had, no prejudices whatsoever. They just knew the way the dogs were with the kids, and the famous pit bull smile is for a reason. And they would play for hours. I mean, the abuse that these dogs would take, just not because the kids were abusive, but just because they're kids and they don't know any better, and just laugh and play and suck it up with them like it was the greatest thing in the world. And the dogs used to look forward to it, and the kids used to look forward to it.
Well, we have a break coming up right here as soon as Dave pushes the button, and then we'll be back. And we'll continue to digress. Nature, nurture, and dogs. So whenever you're ready, Dave. Back, second half of the show, and on another perspective, it's Monday. Oh, we didn't say the date, did we? Did you say the date, Bob?
Yeah, I did. It's March 31st.
March 31st. Okay. All right, so thank you for listening. This is Wolf Spirit Radio, a listener-sponsored network. Okay, so this hour we're going to be talking more about nature, nurture, and puppy dog kisses. And Patrick had an idea. We'll make the connection between the four-legged variety and to the two-legged variety to bridge the gap, because unbelievable how much of the overlapping things here. Is Patrick here? Did he make it through the break?
Yeah, I'm here. I always got you guys on mute.
All right. So do you want to lead in here, or did you have an idea, plan, thought? Or
I just like throwing it out there and watching the dogs tear it to bits. Is there a difference between dogs and humans because we all operate at a basic animal instinct level, even though we think that we're higher brain creatures? There are basal instincts that motivate us. That's our reaction. Thought seems to be like a time-delayed action.
And then who's sponsoring the thought is another thing. Who is behind the thought, or what is behind the thought? Because it's not always our biology that's behind the thought.
And also this brings up the interesting thing of Patrick's mentioning the enteric response, and we have indications of even the enteric response now being altered, as evidenced by that whole fight versus flight, and now they throw freeze in there.
And so what I'm trying to do, because I am the Grim Reaper of grocery, is just to throw a spanner in the works and go, okay, nature versus nurture. We know that nurture is artificial. I've got 4 books in the works right now that says nature is pretty darn artificial too. If you start shooting rabies into pit bulls, Rottweilers, and Dobermans, if they are naturally family pets, and then they start biting the family, was it the nature of the dog, or was it something artificial that was shot into them? Because, by the way, folks, this is the most important thing to consider. Rabies incorporates itself into the cells of the host.
And if you're not getting the shot to have the rabies injected into you, another vector is the dog bite. Is that correct, Patrick?
Well, here's the way I look at it. We used to have dogs, and these dogs would go into what the vet called a false heat, H-E-A-T. And they would get all protective. They'd get in a corner, and they'd growl constantly. And we'd try to comfort them, and these dogs would bite me. And I always viewed that in afterthought after I started studying this stuff of, oh, man, I just got vectored with rabies, because there is no such thing as a false heat. These criminal vets made that up to cover the fact that every year you get the rabies vaccine, and every year the dogs go crazy. And so that craziness transfers through the dog, up the central nervous system circulatory pathway, to the brain and to the salivary glands, where it was by nature designed to be transmissible. And so, no doubt in my mind, I got the veterinary vaccine form of rabies bit into me. I didn't even need to be vaccinated.
I'm thinking that this is airborne, because I know people that do not even have a dog, never been around a dog, and they got rabies inside of them. So it has to be airborne. I mean, that's my thinking.
Let's examine that, Will. It gets into the salivary glands. So let's just say that you're not a hermit. You go out into public. People own pets. I can smell pets on people from 6 feet away. 6 feet away, I can smell whether or not you got dogs or cats. Well, people talk. If you've ever looked at people talking in the sunlight, you can tell they're spitting in the air. If rabies follows the salivary glands, if it's in your spit, then all you have to do is go into public, and you've been exposed, man.
Do either one of you have any sort of research or experience, I guess Patrick especially, with the rabies thing as far as diet is concerned? Because I have 6 dogs. Rabies has never come up on my scans, and I will say this. The absolute worst thing you can do for the health and behavior of your dog, and I don't care what brand it is is feed them dog food out of a bag or a box. And my dogs are on natural meat diets, and I've been through this with literally hundreds of rescues, and the behavioral changes and the health changes in them, including the instances of the behaviors that you describe, are completely eliminated with what is their natural diet as opposed to what comes in those boxes. I mean, there just seems to me to be a severe connection between what Patrick describes as this abnormal behavior as induced by, you know, shots like rabies and things like that, and their ability to stem this stuff off based on their diet.
That wasn't even a thought in my mind, and I just took a note on it. Very insightful.
Well, when you feed a pure carnivore grain, nuts, like rice, and then you mix it with the protein, and you cause that indigestion in the stomach, just that alone can cause such a hormonal, gastric imbalance. That alone causes problems. Okay, not only that, you have the insulin rushes, the blood sugar increase. That feeds these pathogens. Any of them, viruses, bacteria, and fungi. When you raise your glucose, you feed these pathogens. And on top of that, the box and the bag food really harms the endocrine system because of the plant chemicals, the plant components. So it doesn't surprise me that you're going to get a behavioral difference, a shift. They're going to act more like dogs when you start feeding them what they are designed from nature to eat. Because I've never seen a dog, at least on my farm, not one time the dog ever walked over to the corn, shucked off an ear and ate it, or went over out into the barley field and had barley, or any other grain. They just don't eat that stuff. They have to be either very ill or like starving to death before they even think about looking at something like that for food. So that's my 2 cents worth, Bob.
Yeah, like I said, it's just, you know, and now that we're talking about it, and the more I think about it, it's just you know, especially in terms of the discussions that we have about, you know, more of the binary agents and the tertiary agents, where things lay dormant in your system until other things become present, and things like that. Because I mean, I've seen the behavior that Patrick describes before, and I've seen it be, you know, very, very severe. It's not that common. I don't see it that much. And most people, when they switch to a raw meat diet for their dogs, their immediate complaint is what I call the protein Joneses, which after they eat, they get very energetic, very, very charged. And depending upon the nature of your dog, they can become more dominant or more aggressive when they're playing, if you have a pack or whatever. But in contrast to that is, you know, generally speaking, after they eat, you know, kibble or food with fillers in it, or even, you know, the quote unquote natural foods that come in bags, you know, their behavior becomes soporific. They become miserable, more testy, lack of energy, things like that. So I was just kind of curious, because I know Patrick, you know, has delved into the rabies thing a lot, and you too, seeing it more and more. If anybody has just sort of made any connection there between, you know, the grains and whatever, and the proliferation of the particular rabies virus.
Well, when you look at the grains, that they put into dog food, and I've hauled grain, and it's usually what's not good enough for human food goes to the dog food or the feline factory, right? The amount of decayed, like for instance potatoes, because that was one of the main things I hauled, was potatoes into the potato flake factory that went for dog food. You couldn't, it's not human consumption. It was so rotten and so bad, and it stank so bad. If you ever been around rotting potatoes, it's like the next foulest smelling to rotting flesh. And yet they just dry it up and put it into the dog food. I've hauled stuff out of the rendering plant with ground up animal parts to dog food factory, Alpo, in Crete, Nebraska. And the stench, the ungodliness of what goes into dog food and the main sellers, it's no wonder the dogs eat that stuff and they become weird. Because it has to have a negative biological effect on their body. I mean, it can't but have that.
Yeah, and too, if you want to talk about the nature versus nurture thing and the programming, not only, if you want to look at it this way, is the diet and the medication being used to program the dogs, but then the emotional response to the way most people interact and react with their pets is, a secondary form of programming to us as well. You get into that situation where people do crazy, extreme things with their dogs. I mean, I know a lot of people that pay more attention to their dog's health, whether it be a positive direction as far as being natural with their animals, or more of the lamestream medical thing, but they get more obsessed with their pets than they are with their own health. And we have that form of programming on us as well. And it's one of the most effective means of emotionally programming people. We have that Super Bowl commercial that went viral on the internet with the dog and the horses. It was a Budweiser commercial, I believe. You have the instances that go viral now of the police, and all the police departments, for all appearances' sake, indiscriminately shooting dogs. You can verify the validity of some of those instances, and some of them are sensationalized and painted in, a particular direction to serve an obvious programming thing, but that's becoming more and more prevalent. And environmentally speaking, as far as programming goes, one of the things that we talk about is isolation. I mean, humans are social creatures, and becoming more and more isolated, and then having that isolation impinged upon by outside forces, threatening your home, threatening your families, threatening your lives, etc. It's becoming more and more and more personal. So, once again, this creates that conflict in us, who we are naturally as human beings, social animals, and how we're being programmed and pushed into this, isolation with technology and with fear, and then the next step is having that fear invaded. On one of the article that we were just discussing before the show, the town in Long Island, where they have a new housing enforcement unit in the police department that can enter your house and search it warrantlessly, because it happens to be a city that's got exceptionally high taxes, and according to the town council, There's a predominance of illegal tenantry that happens there. So they've created a selective housing enforcement unit that has a zero tolerance policy and no longer needs a warrant to search and enter your premises or to spy on you, and you need city approval to have guests at your house beyond a certain period of time. I mean, so these environmental infringements, it's becoming more obvious to people how interlaced they are, that this is a grand overall plan. This is not a bunch of random, accidental, unique, discrete occurrences. You know, it's becoming more and more clear that there's an agenda here.
Well, this ties back into the original email here. It says, could you talk about the effects on upbringing that upbringing has on people? Well, it's clear the upbringing that most people today, there's a great chasm taking place. Because where I was raised, if a law was proposed to come and search my house because the law enforcement potentially thought that the house guests were there too long, everybody in the house would be protecting everyone else in the house, and you wouldn't make it up the driveway, let alone to the door. So the upbringing that's taking place today, the social engineering that's taking place today, is quite different in different parts of the country. Like that town, is that on Long Island?
Yeah.
Bob?
I think I still have it up here from when we were talking about it before the show, actually.
Something Berry or something, wasn't it?
Yeah, Westbury, Long Island, zero tolerance housing enforcement program.
It seems to me these infringements, these proposed laws are happening in these higher saturation, older communities.
Here's the part that should get you the most. At the town council meeting, they put up a poster that said this, and I quote, "Modify search warrant law to eliminate prior notice, aggressively use warrants and housing sweeps on a regular basis, ... in capital letters, done, with an exclamation point." You bragged about this.
So people of today don't have the internal fortitude to stand up for things, because the social engineering is wanting you to believe that you are on the receiving end of the dictations of what transpires in your county or your town or your area.
Well, here's what the mayor had to say. Mayor Peter Cavallaro claims that allowing property owners to make their own rules, quote, victimizes the community as a whole, unquote.
See, the problem here is complete lack of definitions. And so when you define community as the Candida Archon hive mind, then all this makes perfect sense, really. It still is, room for outrage and shutting the hive down, but it actually makes sense.
I agree with you, Patrick, because that hive mentality, and when he's talking, where he's talking from, is definitely from the parasitic side. And you have to look at something else. Long Island has been the object of Army and United States Department of Agricultural open atmospheric testing for over 70 years. So you want to talk about this archon, bacteria, fungi, virus, hive mind. Well, those people that have been living out there generations have a little specialty. They're special. The biological warfare that's taken place in open atmospheric testing that has taken place in the population in around that part of the country is a little bit more saturated than most areas. I mean, it ties into biology of aggression. I mean, get a book called Lab 257, and you'll read about the viruses and bacteria that have escaped Plum Island, and it was not in the news. Some of the locals did make a stink. They appeased them, they meaning the government, the United States Department of Agriculture, appeased the locals and still kept on doing their testing. I mean, how in your face is that? And then you wonder why they're just coming out with these crazy laws. I mean, this is biology of aggression in full force right here.
Well, and you touched on it as far as upbringing goes, and we're talking about, you know, what the powers that be determined to be, you know, house guests or unacceptable lengths. We went from the generations of the extended families where you had multiple generations under one roof, then, you know, to the let's put grandma and grandpa in the retirement home or the medical facility, you know, situation. Now we have the situation, you know, the no more stay-at-home moms, no more parenting, that everybody leaves the parenting to the Xbox or the public school indoctrination system or whatever. And, you know, even in a, if you want to call it a crowd, I mean, it's hardly a crowd anymore, but, you know, even in the instances of your own family, I mean, people are as isolated as it gets. I mean, when I was a kid, there was no television, there was no eating, you know, dinner with the television on or in front of the television. It was a treat if you were allowed to have the radio on or something like that. You know, and I think about, you know, my big joke was I left home when I was 16 because I figured out I would be 47 before enough people died that I would get a seat at the big table at Thanksgiving. I mean, you know, I came from a relatively huge family, and you know, I look at it nowadays, and people don't even know who their relatives are half the time. You know, they live in complete isolation, and this in and of itself is a huge, huge precursor to making you susceptible to programming, because once again, irrespective of environment, okay, you have a natural predisposition to be a social creature. Okay, humans are pack animals. So in being isolated, your longing to join something increases severely, and your susceptibility to compromising who you are as a person is relatively, you know, wide open to getting you to believe whatever you want to believe. And we look at this in some of the more niche and crazier, you know, groups and subgroups and things that you hear about on the news, that these people got together with these, you know, bizarre, what we consider to be bizarre, absurd beliefs and things like that. It's because, you know, they'll basically do anything for some sort of social acceptance. They'll believe anything.
This brings to mind the documentary The Matrix, and Neo living in the clear goo being attached to the machine in his little isolation pod, and then he gets flushed, and now he's around others, the crew, the few of them that were the crew. and the difficulty that he had being raised in that isolation tub with that stuff, and then having to interact and learn how to interact with other people. And this, again, back to vaccinefraud.com, the PDF section. There's a document there. What is it? Quiet Weapons for Silent Wars? Patrick?
The other way around.
Okay, well, whatever. You'll get it. It's laid out in there, the intentional causing of the isolation with people when they're even around other people. I mean, go to the mall. Go sit at a restaurant and just watch the young people today.
So you guys already outlined, Will, you were saying that one family was together, was community. If some idiot was stupid enough to come in and try to enforce idiocy, they'd be run out of town. But now we have the divide and rule situation where the nuclear family is completely dissolved, and then any kind of predator can come by and say, hey, I'm putting in a smart meter.
Hey, get your vaccine. You might get ill. And the sheer marketing hype of the used car salesman kicks in, and then now everybody believes everything they're being told, and they're wondering why they're being taken advantage of. They're wondering why they're not healthy. They wonder why their life isn't working. You don't have to wonder much. Society's been engineered this way. This is the beauty of nursing on the government teat. It's all about perspective. Because just like what Patrick was saying about what that official was saying was actually benefiting which community? It wasn't the community at large out here in the public. It was the community inside the courthouse or the city building. It was those community in that community in there that lives off of a paycheck by terrorizing the other communities. You know, welcome to reality here.
Well, which also brings us back to something else, and that is the natural. I don't want to say cure, because it's not a cure, but we'll say environment, since we're talking about nature versus nurture. Okay, as Patrick described before, we have two responses to things. We have an immediate biological encoded self-preservatory response to things, which in and of itself we've already talked about is under attack, and it appears to be somewhat transmutable, although not with the amount of success that the second layer, which is the thought or ego-invoked layer of response to a particular situation, is controllable. And here's the situation. The natural environment that creates the most difficulty to you being susceptible to any behavioral programming is anger. Okay? And talk about the assault on the emotion of anger. We're taught that it's a lower instinct, or a lower emotion to be angry. It's a negative emotion to be angry. There's no such thing as a negative emotion. Okay? Emotions can lead you to have negative outcomes and perform negative behaviors, but the emotion in and of itself is you know, a natural part of you. Okay? And biochemically and emotionally and intellectually, anger creates the environment whereby you are given the greatest opportunity to actually be aware of and in tune with the dichotomy that the programming is creating and the conflict it's creating with your natural state of being. I mean, that's what one of the manifestations of the anger is the cognitive dissonance. Okay? Your reaction to cognitive dissonance is when you are forced to process two completely and totally opposite situations simultaneously. Okay? The inability for you to do so or to justify these two bipolar opposites simultaneously is what's called cognitive dissonance. Okay? The two responses to cognitive dissonance are usually either a complete shutdown, total apathy, okay, or an intense anger and frustration in your inability to do so. Okay? What they need more than anything else is for you not to be angry, because your anger will cause you to find one of these polar opposites to be more valid and more truthful to you than the other, in which case they lose the ability to keep you helpless and apathetic and controlled. Okay? So, once again, and this is becoming more and more prevalent lately, is this whole, whether you want to call it the light and love movement, the intellectuals, the rationalists, the whatever, is, we're not supposed to get angry anymore. Getting angry doesn't solve anything. Getting angry doesn't do this. Well, I got news for you. Unless you are angry, okay, the path leads to apathy. Unless you are experiencing this cognitive dissonance as what it is, which is a complete and total violation of nature and nurture against each other, okay, you will not react. You will sit down and say, oh, yeah, I think it's a great idea that the town councilman just decided that the police, with no apparent forewarning, can just enter my home and check and see who's hanging out in my house. Okay? Where's your response going to be? Okay? Where's your priority? Where's your sense of self? Okay? So again, we have nature and we have nurture, and they can either work simultaneously with each other, whether we're talking about nutrition, okay, or emotion, or they can work against each other, and they can be used against each other. Okay? And the fact remains, from my perspective, unless you're going to develop some sense of anger here, okay, all you are doing is making yourself susceptible to the next layer of programming, to the next layer of their plan, to the next choice that they're going to feed you, as opposed to you just saying, in the classic line, I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore.
So that's why all these things are happening. They keep you in the fear state, but they don't allow the state of anger, really. If that happens, they come in, they beat you some more, and to keep you over into the fear state rather than in the angry state. Is that true?
Oh, in my observation, yes, it's absolutely true. The fear can lead. The fear can lead to apathy. I look at it this way, and this is a personal test for everybody. What emotions lead you to action, and what emotions lead you to curl up on the corner of the sofa with a half a gallon of Haagen-Dazs? Okay? It's a little bit different for everybody, but I'm not talking about the subject matter. What I'm talking about is, what is your response to the subject matter? Okay? What are the common denominators between the things that won't let you sit still and force you to action? Because for some people, it's fear. There's nothing unhealthy about fear. Fear is that thing that makes our adrenaline system pump up, makes our heart beat a little bit faster. Think of the daredevils. Think of the positive manifestation of fear. Cars, guns, motorcycles. I mean, dangerous hobbies and things to that effect. Fear makes some people get up and move. I can't be a spectator at anything. It drives me out of my mind. Okay? And then you get other people that fear is just the opposite to them. Fear is what makes them sit in a corner. Fear is what makes them cower. Is that their inherent natural state? Or is that a subject, or an effect rather, of an external program? Okay? We talked about this fight versus flight response, which is natural. Okay? Now modern psychology says it's fight versus flight versus freeze. No, there's nothing natural about freeze, folks. That's programming. Okay? If you think you have a biological, hardwired predisposition to do nothing except allow yourself to become extincted, okay, there's a little something wrong with your cognitive thought process there. Okay? That is the effect of a program. Okay? And it has been identified and studied because there are so many people that disagree with that fundamentally as an enteric nervous system response, as a primitive response, a reptilian response. This response of freeze comes from the sudden imposition of an I don't want to say unknown, but an unnatural threat. Like the quote, the example I always use and I've used before is the deer in the headlights. Okay? A deer does not just stand there and let a cougar kill it. Okay? It takes off. It runs. It's agile. Okay? It may stand still to try not to be noticed, but as soon as it's spotted, it bolts. Okay? The deer in the headlights thing comes from the car simply because the car is not a natural part of that deer's environment. The car, time-wise, was an immediate, sudden, and shocking introduction to the deer's environment. Okay? The deer developed the inability to respond instinctively because the concept of a car was completely and totally foreign to it. Okay? So it knew not what to do. A creature that's aware of its environment does not have this. Okay? So the fact that we now have this claimed freeze component to our reptilian response system is proof that our environment has become completely and totally foreign to our biology and to our innate being.
If we lose the ability to exist in our environment because of some change, some foreign change, I mean, it's very simple. I have a personal experience I share. Okay? So, I was in the courtroom. I had my own agenda, and I did not understand the rules of the courtroom because no one ever taught it to me. And frankly, the state that I was in has a revolving, they can legislate as the play progresses, the play can change. And I did not know the game rules, so I'm standing there basically with my mouth gaping open, not knowing what to do, totally frozen, going, oh my God, what am I going to do? So I'm with my chess player thinking, I'm going, okay, so if I say this, this is going to happen possibly. I don't even know this because I don't know what's going on. I mean, that is a total synthetic, fictional reality. But yet I'm playing it because I know a couple of options. Either I'm going to walk out that door or they're going to arrest me right there in the room. And I don't know the rules. So my response is, okay, stop. Basically, I froze. And I'm like, I don't know what to do. I can't just raise my hand and say, teacher, I don't know what to do. Can you explain that to me? I tried that, and it didn't work. So after 20 minutes of this game that I didn't know what I was doing, I was just frozen. I mean, is that what you're talking about? Because that's what comes to my mind. Because we live in this total synthetic, basically this synthetic reality here, that it is basically hardwired to keep people in the unknowing, so then they have the advantage.
That's
They
exactly
meaning the psychopaths.
That's exactly what I'm referring to. And once again, the nature of who we are makes us have different responses to the nurture or programming and how we respond to it. And I have to tell you this because it goes with the deer in the headlights in your courtroom story, because as you experienced, you were in an environment whereby it was so completely and totally foreign to you, you have no natural, innate, inborn, encoded ability to deal with it. And I've been involved in motorcycles all my life, to the point where being a coach, teacher, instructor, writer, whatever, my mother raced. I was born pretty much into it. And there is a thing in mostly the free-range states that's actually pretty funny, is a lot of motorcyclists get charged by big animals like buffaloes and bull elks and things like that. So over the course of many years, they did many studies over this, and basically what they determined is this. Okay, and you talk about this is the difference, a deer in the headlights and something like a bull elk. Okay? A bull elk's a territorial animal. It's not a little petite thing, and they can be dominant and aggressive. Well, when a bull elk sees a motorcycle in his little brain, what he sees is a couple of eyes, the handlebars and the levers and the mirrors are bristly horns, and he may not know it's a motorcycle, but it damn sure looks like some other horny, big, a colorful critter. Let's not forget, a lot of nature uses color to communicate certain messages. And this is what he perceives the motorcycle as. He gets territorial, and and you can look these up, there are hundreds and hundreds of instances of these big, mostly male, animals just charging and destroying motorcycles and people on motorcycles, and they will think nothing of it. The difference between them and a deer is that their size and their disposition and what they are genetically by DNA encoded to be has had no need to develop a freeze. I don't know what to do. This is foreign to my environment. It has a thought process whereby it decided close enough that it's just another horned creature challenging my territory and really nothing to be afraid of.
So what you guys have been describing is for that collection of idiots in the state of New York. Their cognitive dissonance comes from, well, I thought I owned my house, and if I own my house, I should be able to do anything I want in it. And that cognitive dissonance is that fear and freeze response that then defaults to apathy because they don't have the aggression that you just talked about that should be natural to every human being going, what do you mean you're just going to bust into my house and I'm not going to kill you? And then for Will, what that does is outlines completely the falseness of what is being presented as nature or nurture. When you enter a courtroom and they change the rules whenever it suits them, that by definition means there are no such thing as rules. It's beyond a game. It's beyond malicious. It's just pure fraud and criminality.
And we are not allowed to bring guns, sticks, or anything to defend ourselves into that illusion. So we are definitely the ones being set up to be terrorized. And how do you even justify? I mean, how do you I have a loss of words because I'm trying to remain calm because I have such sheer passionate anger for that system. That it just crushes me inside emotionally because of what that system thinks it can do tries to do perpetuates on other people. And I have a loss of words because that system is so false and fraudulent. It's just unbelievable. So go ahead, because we only got about 5 minutes of the show. So.
And see, we've discussed this before, and the Marinator really appreciated this thought, and you and Bob picked up on it. We are in the middle of a hive full of dangerous, stinging, lethal insects. We do not want to participate in the hive, but we do not have an escape. Because if we try to leave, they would prevent us. If we don't work for them, they punish us. And so it's not so much that you are invited into the spider's parlor to parlay. It's that if you refused, not only do they have the entire hive to bring out as an army to enforce it, but your neighbors, because the hive told them that you are a criminal, would support the hive in bringing you to that which they call justice. And so it's a double-edged injury and insult that not only do they have the infrastructure for the hive to inflict itself on us, those that we would consider human beings and fellows and neighbors and friends are so a part of the hive that they will inflict it on us by proxy.
Oh, and history is rife with examples of that, whether it be done through fear, whether it be done through artificial shortage, neighbors turning in other neighbors. Up until the most recent, Janet Napolitano on the big screens in Wally World, see something, say something. Whatever manner of programming that they can get to make you think that more eyes are on you and there are spies and assassins everywhere, as a friend of mine used to say, and that no one can be trusted. If times are tough, will you turn on your neighbors and your family even, if you can't afford to eat and you go 3 days without food and you need to feed your family, are you going to rat on your neighbors for some benefit? If you're afraid of death, in Nazi Germany, if you don't report a crime or if you don't report, suspicious behavior, if you don't rat on your neighbors, we'll just kill you. I mean, the history is complete and totally, abundant with examples whereby the most effective means to spy and control on a population, absent now modern technology, is basically through your peers.
We have a really good example in Waco, Texas. Not one neighbor lifted a finger to stand up to those terrorists burning those families alive in that building. Not one. That's how the hive has encompassed almost everybody. And those that don't go along with the hive get taught a lesson like Waco, like Ruby Ridge, like I could go on and on.
And you have 1 minute left.
So, 1 minute to go on.
Yeah, 1 minute to go on. All right, well, here we are, another show. Thank you, Dave, for reminding us. My clock says 57, by the way, and you said 59, just to let you know. So
that's why I come in here. You have 2 minutes left. Now you have a minute left.
You cognizant dissident perpetrator.
Thank you. That's the kindest thing you said to me in weeks.
All right, well, thanks, everyone, for listening. Join us here on Wednesday afternoon for another show. And we will be back. Listen to JP, who's on next. So we are at the end. Dave, take it away.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.